Mike here. You know, if you don't put in the effort over the summer scouting, you're not going to have as much luck as you could in the fall when deer season rolls around. Right now it's the middle of summer, end of July, beginning of August, and we got a right nice afternoon. It's only going up to about 90. The humidity came down a bit, so I'm taking advantage of the break in the weather to hike into this piece of public hunting land and do some scouting. Now, I hope you stick around because we're going to be taking a look at a few of the more unconventional methods I've used to scout deer over the course of the summer. Get out here hiking, it's not as cool as they had promised. Bright hot afternoon. Because of course, I've hiked all the way back to the back side of this hunting area. 50 yards further, and it's the back boundary. And as you can see, these fields back here are all grown up in soybean, which is good because soybean is a summer food source for deer. They'll come out here in these fields and eat it in the evening. But that's not the principal reason I hiked back here. We were back here this past spring hunting turkeys, and these fields were fallow. Now there's a reason we came all the way back here to hunt turkeys. We'd get up here an hour and a half before dawn and do the hike back here because there were 3 or 4 real vocal gobblers in this big 150 acre wood patch over here, and they were using that as a roost, and they were there almost every morning just talking up a storm, gobbling, and there were a lot of people hunting them. They were well known. It was well known that they were in there. So we get back in here to try to get away from the crowd hunting them in the fields on the other side of that woodlot. Everybody was in there calling at them. They'd sneak in there and try to get them and shut them down. They were sitting in the fields hunting them like deer, sitting in the fields calling to them. So we get back here, and our plan was to hopefully have that pressure work in our advantage and push the birds off the roost back into these fields where we could call them away from the gang up front, maybe get a shot at them. And it worked pretty well. Over the course of the season, we heard them a lot. We saw them quite a few times. And towards the end of the season, I got one. I got a nice bird. More on that in a minute. Turkeys weren't the only thing I saw back here. We saw the people up front having the same impact on the deer herd that was in that patch of woods as they did on the turkey. And while we were sitting out here hunting, we saw plenty of deer coming out of that woods and making their way towards the no hunting property just off the back. You can't hunt back there. It's not hunting, it's posted. So there's very little hunting that goes on back there, and those deer were making a beeline for it. And that can be a good place to hunt in and of itself. But that turkey, with 3 days left in the season, I got up in here and I'd had enough. And I decided to sneak back and go for broke and get in that woodlot with him. And the way I got in there was, as I started in, it was a little swampy, and I hit a deer trail. And I snuck down that deer trail, got right on top of that bird's roost, and I had him on the ground half an hour after sunrise. He was a really nice bird, 3 years old or better, had 1.25 inch spurs and 10.5 inch beard, and I was pleased as punch to get him. I wasn't able to get that hunt on film. But what I'm here now to do is to go back in there and take another look at that deer trail, because that deer trail wasn't the only thing I found. What I want to do before I do anything else is establish the deer are still using this trail, that it wasn't just a trail they were taking off on when pressure came into the woods to hunt those turkeys on the front side, and they darted out the back this way, and they only use it as an escape trail. But there's still good track on this trail coming off that field, and it's the middle of the summer, so I'm pretty convinced now that they are still using this trail as a travel road. But I don't want to hunt right here, because it's been my experience hunting public land that if you hunt the edges of feeding fields, you'll probably have company, and that can screw your hunt up. It can mess you up, guys coming and going, and the deer stop using the area. So what I want to do is continue on back further into the woods where those turkeys were. Now, when you come through this thick stuff on the edge here, the trails kind of split up. They take off in 3 or 4 directions, and that tells me that further back in the woods, in the thick stuff, is where they're bedding. And it does get thick over there. Once you pass this little area of knee-high grass here, it gets real thick. It's briars. It's almost impenetrable cover. And that's the type of place the deer like to use. It's also the type of place the turkeys like, because what they would do is they'd get back in that thick stuff and they'd strut back and forth and go over here and over there, trying to lure the hen calls they were hearing into the cover with them. And a lot of guys tried and a lot of guys failed. I killed that bird back in that thick stuff the very end of the season. It was 3 days before the season ended. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on down this deer trail and see what it looks like, because there was an open area further back in that allowed me to set up and kill that turkey. And I want to see if I can't find a good ambush point on these deer as they come in. Nice, nice. Yeah, I was coming up the trail. I didn't have to go far. I found fresh droppings. Oh, the tree came down, I'm scared. But I found fresh droppings coming up that trail, and just beyond there, I came to a cross trail. So the trail comes off the field, comes in here. There's a trail running north-south, and this trail runs east-west. Lo and behold, there's an opening here with some great poplars I'm going to be able to get up in and climb when the season opens. Okay, now that I found a good spot that's got an open shooting lane, all that remains is to put a waypoint on my handheld GPS so I can find my way back in this thick stuff in the morning, and a quick consideration of the wind direction, since I'll be hunting those deer coming in the way I came in. I'm going to need the wind coming this way, and that of course means I'm going to have to come in from the opposite direction that I came in while I'm scouting. But there's nothing wrong with that, because I found some other stuff back in here when I was hunting those turkeys this spring too. When I shot that turkey, I just flipped him over my shoulder and started dead reckoning right down through the thick stuff, heading back towards the truck. Of course, I put my orange on for safety's sake first, but as I came through the thick stuff, I came out in this area here. It's fairly open. Now this is seasonally flooded. There was water in this bottom earlier this spring, but you can see, because of that, it's open. There's not a lot of thick cover, and it makes kind of a travel corridor here. And there are deer tracks on here, which I'm happy to see, because as we get out towards the other field, what I want to show you. Now as I carried that bird out through the little swampy area, I came to this area, which is wide open. It had ankle deep water in it this past spring, a big vernal pool back here in the woods. That's one of the reasons the turkeys roost here, because it floods. They like to roost over water. But this would make a great travel route for me to get in and out of here quietly when I come back to hunt those poplars back there. And there's one other feature here that really caught my eye, the reason I came through this way, and that's right here on these trees. Now these rubs are old, but they are very good sized rubs, and they were fresh this spring. They had just been made to pass the fall. So that buck was coming down through here. Now, I've seen good track on this trail, large track, leads me to believe there's a fairly nice deer. It could be the buck that left those rubs last fall. So I want to set up an area in here too that I can hunt probably as an evening stand, because the front fields are soybean and they're not far off. Try to catch these deer coming out in the evening to those fields to feed, because most of the activity last spring was deer being pushed off the front trying to escape to the back. One more spot I want to show you. Come on. This area here is about 1.5 miles from where we started, and you can see it's right thick and nasty. It's behind a fairly large swamp, and it's about as far as you can get on this particular piece of land away from any of the available parking areas here. Now, the reason I'm back in here is because this is where I was hunting this past spring on Saturdays. On days when I'd be coming up the road and see a lot of cars parked to use this area, I'd swing around, come back down in here. Because it's so far away from parking and because it's so thick and hard to get to, not as many people will come back in here. They look for a place with a little easier access. Now, there were turkeys back here, and one time I had them 30 yards away back in that thick stuff, gobbling, and I couldn't see him. Another time, I saw him slip through. I'd see his little head bebopping right along, just through, caught glimpses of him through the thick stuff, and I didn't get a clean shot. So he got on around me that morning too. But I'm not back in here scouting for turkeys. I am back in here scouting for deer. And the reason I came back in here to scout for deer is because while I was sitting in here on several mornings, coming down this trail right here, deer blew at me. Now, we're about a 20-minute hike from the fields way over there, but I'm figuring the deer took their own sweet time till about an hour and a half after dawn, coming in off those fields through the woods and wound up coming down this trail here. It happened more than once. So I had a pattern, idea of a pattern started. Now, what I want to do is I want to check this area for tracks on the trail, and if there are still tracks on the trail, I'm going to pick out a tree about 20 yards from that trail and set up, see if I can't catch them doing that when the archery season opens this fall. I'm heading back to the truck. I'm about out of water. I want to get back to my cooler. It's a little warm out here. I got quite a bit of hike in this heat in front of me, but hey, did you see any deer while you were turkey hunting this spring? Perhaps that's not just a turkey hunting spot. Maybe you want to get back out there and take a look at it this summer, see if the sign isn't holding up. You may have caught on to a pattern you weren't aware of until spring turkey season. Why not give it a try? I know I am. These techniques have worked for me several times before, and I got my fingers crossed they're going to work again this fall. So we'll have our cameras out here with us on hunts when we get out here this fall to see how well we do. Why don't you like, comment, and be sure to subscribe and see how those hunts go. In the meantime, we'll be picking up our search for perch this summer, and we might even be going after some snakeheads. So check back real soon. We're www.camochairproductions.com. You can see all our videos there, or on Sharing the Outdoors at YouTube.